Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. I'm going to be talking about a handheld here, and this is inspired by all these Anbernic handhelds I've been seeing online. Most recently, the Anbernic 300X, because it looks a heck of a lot like a GameBoy Micro, and it reminded me that, hey, wait a minute, I've got a GameBoy Micro myself. This one I've had for many years. Just got Final Fight 1 playing on here, which is great because it comes with Roxy and Poison in it. But we're not here to talk about the game because I've talked about it a million times. I want to talk about the actual hardware, the GameBoy Micro. I love it, but it wasn't the first sort of form factor I got for the Micro or for the Game Boy itself. And it wasn't even, well, what I talk about more often on this channel is actually my AGS 101 with a backlit screen, which is really, really nice, a bigger screen, and I like the color recreation in this one more. However, the Micro I got before the AGS, because I couldn't get the backlit version of that. It was only the front-lit version, which isn't very good. It doesn't pop the same way that this backlit version does, and the Micro pops even more. But yeah, because I've always talked about that thing, I'm going to leave that to the side. The very first way that I experienced Game Boy games or Game Boy Advance games was actually not with either of those devices, but in fact it was on my old Nintendo DS, the fat one, because it came with a nice big gap here that you could stick a Game Boy Advance cartridge into and carry around with you everywhere, in addition to your regular DS game. So DS up top, Game Boy Advance down the bottom. And that was sort of my first foray into that, and I carried this thing with me to work and stuff. Oh, it's fired up there. Still got power. Wow, that's impressive. Yeah, I loved this thing to death and carried it everywhere with me. And that was where I played more Game Boy Advance games. But not too much, because eventually I got some really, really great DS games and didn't end up playing the advanced ones all that much. But I did get this Micro. And part of the reason why was the form factor, the small size. It's puny. It has certain disadvantages. Oh, we're gonna die. Oh, I think we died. Let's start again. Let's do Hagar. Yeah, there are certain disadvantages to the Micro, but overall, I actually really, really love it, and I think maybe I actually play it more than the old AGS 101, which is kind of unusual. I wanted to talk about why and basically cover this device itself in a little bit here, and what I like about it. Now, disadvantages. Let's start with the sort of negative, and the reason that this didn't end up being my handheld of choice very often. First of all, unlike this guy, this one can't play Game Boy Color nor Game Boy original games. There's no way. Let me turn it off. The slot here is too, well, it's not that it's too small, but it is designed not to take original Game Boy cartridges, nor can you put Game Boy Color cartridges. Well, you can put them in there, but it doesn't get recognized. Like, they just fall back out. The nice thing with our good old friend, the AGS 101, is that you can actually pop an advanced cartridge out and stick in either original Game Boy, which you see me do quite often, or Game Boy Color, and away you go. So that really, really increases the library capabilities of this handheld, not that handheld, which is a bit of a bummer. Another thing that I'm not wild about when it comes to the Micro is certain games, like Advanced Wars here, are almost unplayable on it. I really have a hard time reading some of the text in Advanced Wars. I'm actually compiling a list of games that are very, very playable on the AGS 101, but when it comes to the Micro, just not going to happen. So those are downsides to the Micro, but there are a lot of things that make this actually preferable to the AGS 101. For example, I have played the ever-living heck out of the Activision Anthology. You can play old Atari 2600 Activision titles in this thing, and I found I was taking this thing with me everywhere. When I got this giant big list of all these different games, let's fire Beam Rider, I guess. And it's really, really a great, great game that you can actually play and enjoy. And I found that the other thing that's really nice is because the screen is actually smaller real estate than the AGS 101, the pixel density is tighter, and so therefore you actually end up with a much nicer, cleaner image. It's a little bit like in the olden days of like CRT televisions, I used to find that a big CRT didn't always necessarily look better than a smaller one because the lines were physically closer to each other, the raster lines. And I find as well with the micro, it looks a lot nicer because of the fact that all the pixels are squished in tighter. And another one of my favorite titles is this, the Namco Museum Collection. What's really good about this one, and part of the reason why I take it with me everywhere, is because as you can select through all these different arcade machines, you actually have the option to play them in Tate mode. Like, let me just fire up Galaga here. And you see there's the boot up sort of regular screen, but what's neat is if I hit select, I can now rotate the screen and I can play Galaga on a tall monitor. Now it's a little awkward trying to hit the A button up at the top and steer down at the bottom, but it is doable. I've got the sound turned down a bit low here, but anyway, yeah, you can see, like, it is doable. That's really cool. I've always loved that about this particular game. And there's another one. There's an Atari collection that does that. There's even a homebrew game that does that. Really, really awesome. That adds a whole level of functionality, like being able to play. Let's get Pac-Man fired up. This one looks really good and is so much more enjoyable when you play it with just your thumb. There are many times I'll just sit here and just sort of fly along and do Pac-Man on the go with my thumb on the D-pad, and it's fully playable arcade Pac-Man in my pocket. And in fact, let's talk about that pocket functionality. The great thing with the Micro is it's the size of a candy bar. Like, here's a standard Mars bar, and it's the same size, a little bit thicker, like, taller, but thinner. But, what's great is, just like a candy bar, I can just stick this thing in my pocket, away I go. It's great for portability. As much as I like the AGS 101, it's not really as portable. I mean, it does sort of fold down nice and compact, but I don't like it as much as this thing. Now, there's certain benefits and disadvantages. The fact that this thing closes like a clamshell means that the screen doesn't get ripped or scratched. This one does. Now, the benefit of the Micro is, but you can always just pop off this protective faceplate and replace it. And the first one, the first faceplate I ever had for this thing did have a few scratches and scuffs on there, but I just got a replacement faceplate. That was a lot harder than I was expecting, though. I had to order one out of China, and it took forever to get here. So maybe if these were a dime a dozen, especially at like retro events, I used to think, oh yeah, you'd be able to get one anywhere. No, they're not that easy to come across. So now I'm a little more protective of the Micro's faceplate itself. But I will say the final thing that's really great about the Micro is the D-pad and this interface. So much better than trying to use this D-pad. For me, this is a much better interface, one that I like a heck of a lot more. This is closer to what the original Game Boy Advance design was capable of. It had a nicer feel, better ergonomics. This is just that little bit pokey and hokey because it doesn't fit in your hands very well. But the thing is, you can get an original Game Boy Advance that's been modded so that crummy backlit or side lit screen. Actually, no, the original. Sorry, I stand corrected. The original Game Boy screen did not have any light at all. The Game Boy Advance. They have now got mods so you can get that sort of thing. You can have a backlit mod so that your original Game Boy Advance has all of the benefits. The really nice D-pad, the nice in-your-hands feeling, without having to deal with the problems that the AGS design has with this not-so-great D-pad. And yet, you don't have the same problem. So, like, I'm very glad that this is kind of a mixture between the two worlds. It's got all the benefit of the nice backlit screen, really nice backlit screen. It's the size of a candy bar, so you can take it anywhere. But admittedly, it has its drawbacks as well. The fact that this screen does scratch and that you have a hard time getting these replacements The fact it does not play any of the original Game Boy cartridges or anything like that. You know, take it, there's pluses and minuses all round for it, but generally speaking, I got the Micro because of the ability to be able to carry it around super conveniently. I thought to myself, yeah, to enjoy that great library, this is the machine for me. And then the AGS kind of came along with its ability to also play original Game Boy and Game Boy Color cartridges, and sort of I began to like wane my distance. I became a little distant from the Micro. I do love the Micro for its history for me, but I'm much more of a AGS player now for anything that's Micro or Game Boy Advance related. However, I just thought I'd do a little discussion of this thing. I keep seeing all these Ambernic 300Xs, and I'm like, no. Let's talk about the original Micro, because that's the best. All right, well, until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.